I'm going to introduce Mike Dotson here. He's going to get our program started. Mike Dotson is one of our board members here. Thank you all for joining us. We're expecting a great evening.
Thank you, AJ. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for being here this evening. Can't forget the most important thing, the beverage. AJ asked me to say a few opening comments. Again, thank everyone for being here. Some I know, some I do not. Again, my name is Mike Dotson, board member here with the PCA Houston chapter. I've been with PCA for about a year. I'll talk a little bit about why I got involved with PCA and kind of how that came about. So AJ kind of reached out to me on LinkedIn. And I'll be honest, my first instinct was, what is PCA? Who is PCA? I've never heard of PCA. So then we talked on the phone. I'm still kind of mentally just, okay, let me give this a look and see. I see a video, it's about 10 minutes long. I see Steve Young, I see a lot of recognizable faces. So then I go to the first meeting, and even on the way to the meeting, mentally, AJ's never heard me say this, so even on the way to the meeting, I was just kind of like, let's see what this is about. First meeting I see is very organized, a lot of content, a lot of good discussion. So then I was like, okay, I have two sons that are 15 and 11 and an 18-year-old daughter, the blended family. So PCA really spoke a lot to me about just the challenges that we have with sports. A lot of times we see stories on the news. A lot of times we see the Little League World Series, or we have children that are in sports. But PCA talks a lot about what's going on with the schools, the challenges, and I really try to take a personal vested interest in providing ideas and feedback. So I know the other day AJ and I were talking about just how our kids, experiences they have. Personal story that I always relate back to PCA personally is work ethic. High school, I played football. I grew up playing football. By the time I got to be a freshman in high school, I was kind of like, Coach in my 8th grade season set me in his office for 3 hours, convincing me I needed to play. So freshman year, I go play. My freshman coach ended up saying how, you really need to keep playing. You're very coachable. You got all the skills. I was like, Sophomore year, I didn't play. Freshman coach comes to my house. I don't know, my dad must have worked that out or something. I don't know. Set out sophomore year, junior year played, got hurt, tore a delta ligament in my ankle, had surgery, and I was pretty much done. But what I also learned is the work ethic that we employ every day, no matter what field, is transferable to whatever profession we do. And I think a lot of what we try to really talk about here in PCA really touches on some of those things. Not only that, but the challenges we face in whatever profession. So PCA is very near and dear to me. I really hope that all of you that are here find a way to support PCA. And I think that there's no wrong way. We all try to find ideas to really be involved and communicative with our respective communities, but to also pass along the message, better athletes, better people. There's a lot that goes into that. So I think hopefully tonight you gained some insight. I want to thank everyone once again for coming out. I'm going to introduce Allison Footer, who's a writer for MLB. And also, Reed Ryan, President of Baseball Operations. I want to again thank you all for being here. Thank you for allowing me a few minutes of your time this evening. And without any further ado, let me also thank the sponsors that are here. Thank you again, everyone.
Thank you, Mike. Yeah, we want to thank Sandy Bryan, longtime board members, started the chapter here in Houston in around 2008-ish or so. Great, thank you so much. Kim Sterling, she couldn't join us today, but she so graciously donated her table. Our current board chair, Dr. Jimmy Dish, Dr. Baseball, thank you so much. I live in Rocheron, so we have our Brazoria County representation here. Jason Chavez, thank you so much for joining us. Farmers Insurance, and we have friends of PCA joining us in the back. So without further ado, we'll get this program started because y'all didn't come to see me talk. We have a very important person here, and we also have, I think Dallas Keuchels has the ball tonight, so we'll make sure we'll show that here in a second. But Allison Footer, please join us here on stage if you don't mind. Allison is a national correspondent for MLB.com. I think she just is fresh back from Cooperstown. I'll help you out. Sorry. Yeah, this is PCA now. This is athletics. We gotta get it. Whatever you like. And our very own president of the Houston Astros, Mr. Reed Ryan. Join us. Thank you.
Hello, Allison.
Hi, Reed.
I'm stalking you, huh?
Yeah, I love the timing of this because it's so much about what we all want our children to grow up to be, which is good teammates and great sportsmen, and just how that translates into life lessons. And Jeff Bagwell, who was just inducted into Hall of Fame a couple of days ago. What day is it today?
I know,
Today's
exactly. Sunday. He went in Sunday.
And so I just wanted to...
And we have some people that were there besides us.
Yes, there were a lot. So you were there. And that's great. So Jeff Bagwell, everybody knows the kind of career he had, but he is considered by if you talk to anybody who played for the Houston Astros from 1991 to 2005, they will tell you that Jeff Bagwell was the absolute best teammate that they ever had. He is one of the most favorite people, not just players, of anybody who ever knew him. He was the epitome of the guy who knew the right thing to do at all times, who taught dozens and dozens of ball players how to be a great teammate. Adam Everett, if you talk to him about Bagwell, he just goes on, and it just goes from there. So I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Yeah, if you heard his speech, I think the two things that jumped out at me is he said he just tried to get better every single day.
Yes.
And that he tried to help his team win. And it was never about him, and in the end, he put up great numbers. And it really... It made me feel good about our sport and our game to still hear someone not say I, me, I. It was great.
Yeah, it was wonderful. So I just wanted to make sure that we mention him because that was fantastic. Okay, so now we're going to move on to my cheat sheet here, that with some of the questions that we have that we would like to talk to you about, because I think that you bring a great perspective because you grew up as a kid in Major League clubhouses, but you grew up to be a fantastic businessman on the other side of it. And we were all so thrilled when Reed became the president of the Astros. I think it was in 2013, and we just all felt like this was something that was going to be so good for the Houston Astros moving forward as they were entering a period of time where the team on the field was getting so much better. So there's a lot of talk about culture. Clubhouse culture, front office culture, and I know that you're on the side of the organization where you are in charge of so many people that work behind the scenes to make sure that whole thing runs. How important is the culture, and what does that really mean to you?
Yeah, good question. People always ask me, they go, now what do you do for the Astros? And I go, normally the easiest way to describe it is Jeff Luna, our GM, his job is to acquire our players and get them to our manager in Houston. My job is basically everything else, which is the league, which is our television, radio, BAM, our partners, all of our constituents in the community, all of our sponsors, all of our season ticket holders, the facilities we have. I've got everything from Dominican to spring training to our minor league affiliates. I'm just not the guy selecting the players and putting them into our system. Now, a lot of times people come and talk to me because my job is to forecast. I'm always living 5 years down the road. And people were always like, well, what keeps you up at night? I've been thinking since Carlos Correa got here, how do we keep him? That's what keeps me up at night, Right. So that's sort of my job. But, baseball's given me everything I have. I grew up in a big league clubhouse. My dad used to have a saying, at the end of the season, well, now we can go home and pick our own friends, because when you're in baseball, when you get to spring training in February, you're not going home until the end of October. You better learn to get along with people. And I had an awesome childhood. I grew up with the Alomar boys, Darren Sutton, the Cruz boys, Art Howe's kids, Phil Garner's kids. I literally grew up with kids from different parts of the world, different backgrounds. And you look at a baseball team, you're going to have probably a third foreign-born players. You're going to have inner-city kids. You're going to have country kids, guys that went to college, guys that probably didn't graduate high school. You got everything. It's a swath of humanity. And the good teams are the ones where everybody's able to play to their strengths and complement each other's weaknesses and go out and chase a common goal. And so it doesn't change whether it's business of baseball, business of banking, business of anything. my main job is to put people in positions to win. And I think you do it through being transparent, by knowing that, it's real easy. We have 3 core values: trust, integrity, and excellence with the Houston Astros. You got to trust that I'm looking out for you and you're looking out for me, that we're going to strive for excellence and we're going to have integrity in everything we do. And so that's basically sort of the decision matrix that goes into what we do on a daily basis.
Yeah, the best way to have a happy organization is to just win baseball games. But these people that work for you, they put in so many hours. They put in so many consecutive days of work. They work so hard. Are there any things that you do as like team building or just getting everybody together to tell them that things are going well?
Yeah, so Allison knows. Allison, if you don't know, was with the Astros a long time before she went over to Major League Baseball. I think you have to care about the individual, and you can't fake that. And so when I have young kids or people that come in to our organization, and I also play good cop with our players quite a bit, because Jeff and AJ are the bad cops a lot of times. So I'm the guy that's in the clubhouse or on the road or on the field asking them about their families, trying to make sure they're getting what they need out of the organization. I think to truly care about somebody, you have to get to know them. And so whether it's a Dallas Keuchel or it's a kid that's in our sales department, it's where do you want to go in life? Dallas is making some good money now. He's going to play a long time, but he's going to be done with baseball by the time he's 40 if he's lucky. And he's going to have 40, 50 years of his life that he's going to have to figure out. And one of the great things I saw in the game was my dad played 27 years, and there were a ton of people that made a bunch of money and didn't know what to do with the rest of their life. They squandered it, and they had a life-changing opportunity for multi-generations that they let slip away. And so I have a responsibility to our guys to pull them aside and say, look, what's your plan? What are you doing right now? You're playing good baseball, but what are you doing in the offseason? What's your plan to take that money, to take this opportunity, and make sure that 3 generations from now, they're not having to do the hardships that your parents had to do. So there are little nuggets like that. And with our salespeople or our grounds crew, it's, hey, where do you want to go in your life? And what are you doing right now to help us? And how is that preparing you to get to the next step? And the hardest conversations I have, and you remember Christy Felice, a lot of people here remember Christy Felice, Christy Miller, was, hey, look, you're going to have to go somewhere else to get more experience if you want to come back in a higher job here one day. And those are hard conversations, but when people know that you trust them, you care about them, and that you're looking out for their best interests, they're a lot easier to have.
And when they go off to do bigger and better things, then it's a great reflection on the organization.
And I always say, don't forget me, because I'm going to need some kids to come back here, so send me some good people.
Yeah, I should tell my interns, you're probably going to be my boss someday, so just be nice to me. So the Positive Coaching Alliance teaches its live workshops for schools and youth sports organizations the idea of the double goal coach. So that is the coach that, of course, wants to win, but also has the goal of teaching life lessons and character development through sports. How much of that life lessons component do you see happening in pro sports? And in particular with the Astros, and it's really interesting because sometimes when I'll meet an Astros player, when I was a reporter covering them, and you kind of get a feel for like who they are. You don't really know anything about their background, but you have a feeling that they came from really good stock and that they had really good parenting and very good coaching and just a good upbringing. And those guys really do stand out, whether it's the fact that they went to college and were able to mature a little bit, or maybe they just had a really strong foundation. So that all kind of plays into it.
Yeah, it does. It's interesting. My dad, as I said, played 27 years. And so some of my fondest memories were in the winter when he coached me in basketball, that bond of being with your dad and all the kids and having fun. And so I always wanted to coach my kids. And for those of you that don't know, I started out kind of my professional career. I was a minor league player after college for a couple years. And one day when my jersey wasn't in my locker anymore, I realized I was going to have to go get a real job. And there's a guy in the room right here named Don Sanders, who was an owner with the Astros with John McMullen, who became very good friends with us. And I had the idea that I wanted to start a minor league team in Austin. And I was 26 years old, and I got Don and my dad to invest in my idea, and we bought the Astros AA club in Jackson, Mississippi. We moved it to Round Rock, opened up in 2000, ended up moving that to AAA, started a AA club in Corpus, and really have had some awesome memories with the Astro players, and seeing Hunter Pence come up and ask me like, hey, there's a carnival next to Whataburger Field. Do you think you could get me some free ride tickets? Like, I'll never forget that, which I know Fred knows Hunter. I mean, yeah, that's what you're going to ask me, free ride tickets? But, I wanted to coach my kids because my dad was never able to because he played baseball so much. And so I have a son that's going into a senior year of high school. I have a daughter who's a sophomore in high school. I have a daughter in 7th grade, and I married a Division I college basketball player, and she was a coach until we moved here to Houston. And she said, I'm done coaching. You're the sole breadwinner now. But anyway, the reason that I share that is getting to coach these kids has been a joy and a lot of fun. And so the Astros, you'll remember, had a minor league field coordinator named Tom Wiedenbauer. And Tom had a son that was playing in college. And so Jackson was just getting to where he was going to start playing, T-ball for the first time. I said, Tom, these parents in Round Rock are crazy. They've kicked Little League out of Round Rock because they limited the number of games and innings and all this stuff. And they were playing, crazy amount of baseball games. I said, how do you keep all these parents sane? And he goes, Reed, you know what I do every year? He goes, I tell everybody, who's a baseball fan here? And everybody would raise their hand. And he'd go, okay, how many people can tell me who won the World Series last year? He goes, you'd be amazed at how many hands went down. And he goes, tell me how many people won the College World Series last year. And man, there's like 2 people. He goes, how many people, who won the 6A state championship? 5A. He'd go all the way down. He'd go, nobody cares who wins 6-year-old Round Rock Pee Wee baseball, okay? And so I was like, that is brilliant. So I started doing that every year of coaching. I think it puts into perspective that no matter if it's our minor leaguers, of it's little kids, who it is, that why are you playing sports? You're playing sports because it prepares you for life. You're playing sports because it teaches you life lessons that most people learn the hard way in the real world. It teaches you to work with others. It teaches you to set goals. And most importantly, it teaches you to fail. And so all of the failure I've been around in my life, from watching my dad play 27 years, from playing college baseball, from playing pro baseball, from working in the game of baseball for 20 years, we're failing all the time. And for long, you don't care about failing. You expect it. Hey, we're going to fail a lot. And then when you have a year like this we're having with the Astros, you just sit back and enjoy it because it's really fun when you're not failing the majority of the time.
Yeah, I want to tell a little anecdote about Jose Altuve, who I think is a prime example of a great teammate and somebody who came into professional baseball as a very grounded person. So, we all know the story of Altuve. The Astros didn't want to sign him because he was so little, and he finally convinced them just to give him a chance. The Astros and the MLB Network worked on a documentary really about Jose Altuve, which was funny. It was a few years ago. He was still so young, but he had such a great story. And they had a premiere for the movie in a movie house nearby. And they interviewed his parents. And then you kind of got a feel for what kind of kid Jose Altuve was. So his mother says, Santa brought him a bat and a ball and a glove for Christmas when he was 5. And Jose, through the years, he'd come home and he'd stand at the door and wait for his dad to come home from work. He'd just stand there, patiently waiting, and his dad would come home from work, and they'd go out to play baseball every day. And at the end of the movie, Altuve's father starts to cry, and he says, he's a great baseball player, but I'm so much more proud of him because he's such a good person. And I thought, well, this makes perfect sense why Jose Altuve is such a great person, because he really is everything that you would possibly want. And I love the fact that he is now the leader on this team. He's the guy that I think, not really forecasting anything, but perhaps the Astros have the best chance to have him play his whole career in Houston, I hope. But that's the kind of guy that you want, a wonderful teammate and just a grounded person. That's the kind of guy that you want as your leader.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason this club has resonated with so many people. They love the way these guys play the game. These guys really cheer for each other. You can't make up the stuff that they're doing, the celebrations, the love they have for one another, and they're really good people. And you see it in the community. One of the funny things that we've had to deal with this year is we don't have very many off days in the game of baseball. We play 162 games over, 172 days or so? 80 days, whatever it is. And so there's not many off days that we're not traveling. And now you've got, Beltran, Correa, Altuve, McCullers, all doing like Springer, all doing charity events. And that just tells you the type of people we have. We've never had, we're so maxed out on charity events on off days. And these guys are good people, and it gets back to whether it's Springer's parents or Altuve's parents, or sometimes a coach that you have that's made a big influence on a kid because maybe they don't have two parents or their parents are not there or whatever. And so we've been blessed to have a lot of those guys over the years.
Yeah, I've never seen in all the batting practices that I've attended, and I think they're in the thousands by now, I've never really seen so many Astros players that just go over as a regular part of their routine, that go over and they sign autographs for little kids, and it's really so much fun to watch. So as young players join the Astros, let's move on to this question. What do you generally see as strengths and weaknesses in terms of their character or personality? So we talked a little bit just about how the number of players that have that in them, but what are some of the characteristics that we see?
Well, I'm going to give Allison some credit. When I got here to the Astros, we had a social media do's and don'ts that I heard you put together on your way out the door, correct?
Yes, I did.
Yes. So, but it's just having awareness with these kids. One of the things we do, we have a lot of Latin kids in our program, and it's a very good way to get talent. The Astros really developed Venezuela. It's sad what's happening down there right now, but for years we had a real connection with Venezuela. Right now we have a lot of Cuban players and we have a lot of Dominican players in our system, and it's one of the things we do is make sure they learn English. And we just put in a program where they can now get a high school, basically a GED here in the States. And so if a kid gets into our system and he never makes it to the big leagues, but he learns English and gets a high school GED, then he's going to be a much better person down the road. So I think it's just having a caring and a desire to see people be better at the end of the day, not just a piece of the cog or a piece of meat that we're trying to get some wins out of before we kick them to the curb. That's really not the Astros way. And if you look around, you see Enos Cabell at the games, you see Jose Cruz at the games, you see Durker at the games, you see Backey, Chris Sampson. Anybody that lives here in Houston, we welcome them back. We want our former players back here, and we want to build that family feel, and we've tried to grow that tent and put more people under it. So I think it's just all part of the full circle, bigger picture.
Yeah, and I think that's interesting with something like Positive Coaching Alliance, where you're not shaping professional ball players necessarily. And while everybody has those aspirations, I think people are shocked to know that, like, of anybody who's ever drafted, like I think 4 or 5% actually make it to the major leagues, and it's even a smaller amount that actually can have any kind of staying power. And so it is so important to teach life lessons, not just lessons, but just actual trying to educate them. And like players like Jose Bautista, he's got an entire academy where he gets these kids to get their high school educations. He gives them scholarships to go on to college, and he says to them, I get it, you want to be a baseball player, you may end up being a professional baseball player. The odds are that you're not going to be, and you need to prepare for something else, and education is so important. And Major League Baseball has now started a program for former players to go back and get educated, to get their degrees. They help them, they counsel them. These are all like hugely important things, and I think we all have a responsibility to help that along.
Yeah, I had the great role model of my dad, Nolan Ryan. He always prepared for when he was done with baseball. He never thought he was going to play 27 years. And so when you have somebody that is into other interests, whether it was ranching or banking or doing stuff with Don, I think it sent the right message to me and my brother and sister, and to other people, and I've tried to pass that on as well, because these guys are going to have to do something for a long time after their playing days are over.
Yeah, it's amazing to think when your career is over at 40 and you still have a normal life expectancy, you have half your life to figure out what to do, and that's a lot of pressure, and not everything always works out for these guys, so it's good to see them getting some help. Okay, so PCA, they have a lot of live workshops for student athletes. The educational emphasis is on players improving themselves, but helping others to improve too, and to compete honorably. In all of the years, you've seen a lot of players, both through working in the minor leagues and also on the major league level, and players that you even knew when your dad played. So this kind of covers the scope of that. What former athletes do you know that really impacted the game in being honorable, selfless, just that kind of role model? I know we've talked about a couple, and Jeff Bagwell.
Yeah, what came to mind when you were reading that is, today we have a lot of stuff going on. You see it on TV of guys bat flipping and showing everybody up, and there's a lot of that today. And I can't say that I'm really, from a fan's perspective, we're in the entertainment business, and there's some people that really like that a lot these days. But a couple of people that come to mind for me are Reggie Jackson and Pete Rose. My dad was a very fierce competitor against Reggie Jackson and Pete Rose. And seeing guys like that go at each other, I'm bringing my best, I'm coming at you, And if Reggie hit a home run, my dad would tip his cap to him. And if, he struck him out, Reggie would tip his cap to him, and the same with Pete Rose. And there's so many of those stories. Bo Jackson, I think one time my dad struck out like 13 times in a row, and then he hit the furthest ever home run at the old Arlington Stadium off of him. And so it's about mutual respect. And I think when players have mutual respect and they're competitors, you end up getting the best of the best. And that's really what I see from Altuve right now is, Altuve's never done anything. You never see him showing anybody up. George Springer's the same way. Correa's very much the same way, minus maybe the WBC. There was a couple of bat flips in WBC, but they play the game the right way, and they want to win. And so last night, Jake Marisnick, when he pops up with a guy on third, and we're in a 2-run ball game, and he slams his bat, he's not showing anybody up. He's just showing his emotion. And I think that caring goes back to having people that have a common goal.
Yeah, it's. I think that if you had to guess who the most influential player was definitely for Jeff Bagwell and on some levels Craig Biggio, I don't think that anybody would guess that it was Casey Candell. Every time when Bagwell retired, when Biggio retired, when Biggio got in the Hall of Fame, when Bagwell got in the Hall of Fame, I call Casey every time when you get to the former player reactions when you're writing about it, and I call him and I say, it's me again, because you're the first person that they bring up when talking about how to be a major league player. So Casey was funny and fun and crazy. He was a bit player. He was not a superstar, but he taught those guys more about how to be a major leaguer, how to be a good teammate than anybody else. And I love that he was one of the first people that Bagwell mentioned in his speech.
Yeah, I think the message there is that older players, whether it's in high school, whether it's in Little League or a coach, you're an influencer, and a lot of times you don't know you're an influencer. And I think that was really Casey Candell's role for both these guys, as Allison said. And so you never forget the influence you have on somebody. Somebody's always watching, and the way you handle yourself and the way you do your business really matters because people are looking and they're going to imitate you. And so that's what I think is great about the PCA is that the more people we have trained in how to play the game the right way, how to coach the game the right way, if there's one or two players saying, no, it's not okay to flip your bat and show up somebody else, then you might affect 10 people that way.
Yeah, fortunately, Bagwell didn't bring up the naked BP that apparently Casey Candell took every Sunday. So it was in the batting cages in the back. It wasn't on the field, but that apparently was a thing long enough to where when I came on the scene about 10 years later, people were still talking about it. So, okay, the last question. What might you expect your dad to say about Positive Coaching Alliance and the power of sport to shape young lives?
Well, I mean, you look at his life. His life was shaped, through sports. If it hadn't been for sports, he might, have not been able to achieve some of the things that he achieved in life. Kids look to coaches. They look to older players. They look to athletes to be role models. Whether you hear, I'm not a role model, well, you are. If you're playing sports, you're a role model. And so every one of you that are coaching in this room, the greatest measure of all of us is the impact we have on other people's lives, as Jackie Robinson said. So I just try to remember that every day, whether it's coaching kids here in Houston or whether it's having employees that work with me or I'm around young players. It's just trying to have a positive influence on our society.
And I mean, really, your family is in the spotlight all the time. And to be this respected, to really have had not a blemish on anything in so many decades, and to be like a part of the community, there's a responsibility, and I guess there's a lot of pride you must take in that.
Yeah, I mean, it's my grandma Ryan. She was she'd whip me real quick, so I never want to get in trouble. So I just pretended like she was watching all the time. And Don knew her, and she didn't give out compliments or smile too often. So I tried to stay on the straight and narrow.
Are we going to have questions and answers from the audience? If anybody has
anything you guys want to ask, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah,
Club, my life, anything you guys want to know, coaching, whatever, my kids, you name it, just have at it. Yes, sir.
I got a question because I always heard that in the early days when Ruth traveled with Milton, that a lot of times he'd stay in different places. He would actually run the stairs in his off days to work out and he'd run down at the park. Is that like he literally in the hotel would be running up and down the stairs?
No, I never saw him do that. He did most of his working out at the field, but I have a great mom. I like to brag about my mom. She's the only state champ in our family. She won tennis state doubles in 1965, and she's the real competitor in the Ryan family. But she would catch my dad sometimes when no one else was around. And him not throwing like 100, but playing catch. She coached my Little League team because he couldn't. We won the Alvin City Championship when I was 11. She was the head coach, so that was pretty cool. And my mom's a great lady, but, all good partnerships are about give and take. And it's really hard to be a successful, independent person behind somebody that's as famous as my dad. And my mom was able to pull it off with grace and elegance, and she's a special lady. Yes, sir.
Daryl Morey, who goes to the Rockets, has been quoted saying character doesn't matter, it's just analytics. And the Astros are an analytical organization, but yet you value character so much. Tell me how you guys pull that balance off at such a successful level.
Yeah, I can't really compare basketball because, we have a marathon. And I'll give you a perfect example. Character matters. We had a guy this year, we've never had a major leaguer suspended for drugs, and we had Polino get popped for 80 games. And the guys in our locker room, they were pissed. They were mad because here we are. We all know we had struggles earlier in the year with keeping our pitchers healthy. And you want to be a part of a team and you sign up to something and then you're doing something like that and you're gone for the rest of the year. He won't be back. So I think that's a perfect example that character matters. You remember a couple years ago we had a guy in the minor leagues who came up to the big leagues, Julio Lugo, who got beat his wife up in the parking garage at Minute Maid and ended up getting released and ended up playing with the Red Sox some in a World Series with them.
He won a World Series.
Yeah,
with him.
and that kind of stuff matters. You can't have. I was thinking today. I actually was on the treadmill before I came over here watching the news and everything that's going on, with the Ravens and Kaepernick. He's a great player, but at the end of the day, if it takes away from what you're trying to do as an organization, and you look at the Astros, we have our Community Leaders Program where we built, fields all over the city of Houston for underserved areas to play Little League baseball, putting, millions of dollars back into those. We have our Urban Youth Academy up in Edgar Acres up there. We just had a kid get drafted this year. We've had a lot of kids go to college. We have our Future Astros program. We're doing things all over the city. How are we going to look people in the eyes if we have guys that are, doing drugs, beating their wives, going to jail, getting in trouble? I can't do it, because what's great about the game of baseball is we bring communities together, and everyone knows what it's like to catch a ball or to hit a ball, or you can experience. Everybody knows what it's like to dunk. Not everybody knows what it's like to have a 400-pound guy push on the line all game against you, but pretty much everybody can experience what it's like to catch and throw a baseball. And you know what? We represent our community. People see the Astros. When we win, there's an emotional connection, whether it was going to a game with your dad when you were a kid, taking your son or daughter to a game, saying, hey, I'm short, Jose Altuve's short, look at him go, that inspires me. Whatever it is, we have emotional connections, and you lose those when you have people that don't make us proud. And the other thing, our little simple saying in the Astros is we want to make Houston proud. You got to get lucky to win a World Series. I've been there a bunch. 11 with my dad with the Rangers, 1 pitch away twice, 1 strike away. Sometimes you got to get lucky. And, Nelson Cruz is 1 step back. He catches that ball, the Rangers win the World Series. But he cheated in and got burned, and that's the way it goes sometimes. So, you got to have a little bit of luck. But if we make Houston proud, then we're going to end up doing what we need to do. And that's good citizens, good guys, winning baseball, competitive baseball, and hopefully that'll equal a World Series. I'm going to go back there, and then I'll come to you, Dr. Bryan. Yes.
How much did the Sports Illustrated cover affect the team and the pressure that's been put on them this year from 2 years ago when they predicted that they would win the series?
I don't really think it does, because these guys they know they're good. They pretty much won at every level these guys have been at. And, they were just waiting for their time, and it's our time. And these guys are coming into their prime. And, there's an old saying, it's kind of like with baseball players, their physical abilities are up here. Guys can bounce back, they can throw hard, they can run fast, but their mental abilities are down here, and they do stupid stuff. And Springer running into walls and getting concussions, and he's just a smarter player today. So is Altuve. And as the physical falls and the mental goes up, when that meets is when you have your best baseball players. And that's what we're on a trajectory for right now with the guys that we have. And they're all going to peak at about the same time. Yes, sir.
There's a lot of talent out there, especially, say, 90 miles south of Florida. So the question is, for both of you, going forward, how does Major League Baseball deal with a difficult diplomatic relationship with Cuba or even Venezuela?
Venezuela, it's going to have to. It's basically a civil war down there, for lack of a better term, and it's a few holding down many, and there's nobody down there. There's no baseball teams down there right now. Guys aren't going back. I don't even know if they're going to have Winter League this year, but that will have to take care of itself. As far as Cuba, there's not going to be an opening up. There's not going to be a draft down there. Those guys still are going to have to get over to the Bahamas or to the Dominican or somewhere, Mexico, and then they're going to be free agents. Now we have a new international signing system that has a pool, and if you spend over $350,000, there's a tax on that, and then you're out for 2 years. So once you bust that threshold, you might as well go for it and try to sign as many guys as you can. And that's why we were able to sign so many Cubans last year. A little bit was luck, a little bit was planning, was that a lot of teams, we can't control when they spend. They had all spent and they were out, and there was really just a couple of us spending this last off season, and there was a good group of Cuban players that came out, and we weren't afraid to spend on them.
It's hard from a Major League Baseball standpoint because there's not much that they can do in terms of ensuring safety. When guys come here, then it becomes their business, but until then. And then you hear stories about having to have really heavy security for a player who defected from Cuba, who has been signed and is in the major leagues, and just the amount of security that you have to make sure that the bad guys aren't going to come find him and get him. And they're right out there in the middle of everybody. So there's a lot. I mean, you hope that it gets better because it gets safer. And I think that's the main conundrum that Major League Baseball is in right now. It's not like they can go and make Cuba do what they want to do, but they certainly have to make sure that the guys are safe, the players are safe when they're here.
Yes, ma'am.
I love baseball stories. There's more stories than you can see in soccer or on the website. So I heard you see the story about Senegal.
I couldn't hear it. Oh, I can't hear you. A little.
I like stories when you can hear about the human side or the fun side of athletes. And I recently heard a story. I live in Dallas, so I heard a story about a funeral that the players had for the designated players.
Glove. Carlos Beltran's glove.
So I actually was not in Houston the day that they did that. And you know what? It's funny how things work out. They did that, and then we had a rash of injuries, and he was in the field a couple times since then. So
The next night, I think that he had
and
to.
then a couple nights. Don't test fate. So that was probably a bad idea, but I think McCann started that.
Yeah, it's funny because those are the things that happen when a team is winning. When I saw that happening, I wasn't at the ballpark, but I said, that's a team that's 30 games over 500. Because then you do these things. Carlos Beltran, who, as we all know, has had an amazing career, a Hall of Fame career, and he's now 40 years old. And he's a leader, and he's made a huge difference. He's been one of the difference makers on this team in terms of just how that whole clubhouse runs. And so for that to happen, that you don't see those things happen when a team is struggling, when they were supposed to contend and they're terrible. Then everyone's mad at each other, and everyone comes into the ballpark wondering what's going to go wrong now. And when you have this kind of team, then you have those kind of shenanigans. It's really fun.
That's exactly what the Rangers reporter said.
Right.
This could be bad luck. And I saw later that, yeah.
Well, I'll share a really good story with you. I don't know if anybody here remembers, we had a player, Sean Barie, and Sean was a coach. So in 1995, I was on a team in the South Atlantic League, and I ended up getting sent to the California League. And Major League Baseball, one of the great things about affiliated minor league baseball is that if a team goes bankrupt, the league steps in and takes over the team. And so the Visalia Oaks, which today is owned by one of the O'Malley family members, went bankrupt in 1995. And so Major League Baseball took the team over, and it became a co-op team. And there were like 10 different organizations that sent players over the course of the year to fill this team out. So I became one of these players, one, because I was stinking so bad, and two, because I was willing to go. So they sent me out to California League, And now I've got these other guys on my team that I don't know. It's like misfit band of toys, you know. And Sean Barrie's brother, Mike Barie, who played at OU, is on the team. And Mike's a firefighter today in California, but he was a very gullible individual that drank about a case of Dr. Peppers every day. So he was always very high-strung. And back in 1995, cell phones were not very small, and not very many people had them, but I had one. And it was in my back pocket, and I was out shagging, and I was with some guys. I was like, man, Mike is gullible. And they were like, he is. He's the most gullible guy I've ever met. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to call the Lake Elsinore front office, and I'm going to tell him he's getting called up. Let's see if he believes that. And so we called, and all of a sudden this girl comes running down. If y'all remember the Post-it notes, like, you know, there was no text back then. You know, it's like memo. She comes running down the batting cage with this note. The Expos are calling you up. The Expos are calling you up. Well, he's independent, co-op ball in California League. He takes off from the cage, jumps up and down, he runs up in the locker room. So I was like, uh-oh, this has gone terribly wrong. Terribly wrong. Because that's what every ball player ever dreams of hearing. And I thought he would realize you're an A-ball. You're not in AA, you're not in AAA, and you're on a co-op team. But he was hook, line, and sinker, and you know, Sean still brings up today. So anyway, I went in the locker room, and we told him it was a joke. Well, then he had me by the throat, and he had me down, and he was going to kill me, but the other guys pulled him off of me. So all was good. About a month later, I'm pitching. Now, this is even funny. I'm starting, and I get to the locker room, and my locker is gone. And there's just an arrow. And I walk down the hall, and there's another arrow, and I walk outside, and there's another arrow, and my locker is in the middle of center field, and the other team's taking batting practice, and everyone's waiting to see what I'm going to do. So I just walked straight out like no big deal. I took everything off, completely naked. I got dressed in center field. I put everything in my locker, like I had a mirror, my hat, the whole deal, and I went over to stretch, and I got a standing ovation from our team. And the grounds crew ended up putting my locker back. So those are the good stories that you get when you play a long time. Yes?
Can you talk a little bit about your experience as a dad and managing those expectations? I know you said you coach your kids, but how is that managing being a sports dad?
Yeah, you know, I always, when your dad is a Hall of Famer, everybody, you know, if I did really good, people said, oh, well, he's supposed to. It's Nolan Ryan's son, you know. If I did bad, they're like, he's nothing like his dad. He's never going to be any good, you know. So it's kind of like a lose-lose situation. And my brother and sister and I and other kids that grew up of, you know, athletes sort of know that feeling. And so when I started coaching my kids, you know, my dad's a Hall of Famer. My mom won state in tennis. My brother and sister played Division I athletics. My wife played Division I athletics. You know, there's a lot of pressure kind of on kids. And, you know, I'm a man of faith, and my son has cerebral palsy. If you've ever seen his story, he throws and catches with the same hand like Jim Abbott. He was a varsity baseball player this year. He's going to play in college. So, you know, he's a very interesting kid. And I think that was probably God's way of saying, hey, you and Nicole better, you know, lay off and just enjoy every moment. And so it's really changed our perspective of, you know, hey, we're out to not try to live through our kids or make them be something. We just want them to be the best at whatever they can be, and we want to help them to get there. And I've got one that my daughter, sophomore, she was varsity basketball and softball as a freshman starter. She works 24/7. She's very driven. My youngest one could care less about anything. She's just out there to have fun. You know, Jackson's somewhere in the middle. They're all different. And so I go back to, I want my relationship with them to be fun, to be healthy, to be enjoying the other kids and being together, and going out and saying, how can these life lessons from sports, whatever you want them to be, from your own input level, to be something that's going to help you when you're an adult. And that's kind of what I always, and I'll share one of my favorite stories. I coached a lot of softball before I moved here, and that was kind of one of the things that it ended up was not able to do with my job with the Astros. And we played a lot of travel softball, probably a little too much, but the girls were good and they wanted to do it. And so my youngest daughter was on a team with these kids, and I was the assistant coach. And my youngest daughter had this snaggle tooth that, like, she was working it for like 2 weeks, but she wouldn't let anybody touch it, and the thing is just barely hanging on. And we said, let's pull that tooth. No. She'd cry, the whole deal. So we're getting ready to go out and play the game, and the head coach finished with a little talk. And he says, anybody got anything to say? And I go, I got something to say right here. And the kids, I never talk, so they were looking at me. I was like, you know what we're going to do to that team out there? do you know what we're going to do to them? And they were all like, this, eyes were this way, because now I'm getting very loud. I said, we're going to rip their teeth out. And I took the chance to, Ella was looking, and I grabbed that tooth, and I pulled it out, and she didn't even notice it was out, and it shot a little stream of blood. And the other kids were like going, what is going on here? And I go, I got you, Ella, I got your tooth. And then she was so mad at me. But like, that's the great memory. I don't know who won the game. I don't know what we did. But every time I see those kids, and a lot of them come here for tournaments, and they come out the game, they go, remember when you pulled your daughter's tooth out? So that's the joy of sports. It's those relationships with your kids.
Does that hurt you on that too?
Anybody else had that? That ended the day right there. That was the end of the day. All right, well, thank you guys very much. We appreciate it. I hope you all have a great night tonight. Thank you for letting me do this.
Reed, I know you're a very busy man, and I really appreciate your time. And so this is a little token of our appreciation. Thank you so much. I know we've got an important event going on here in a few minutes, so thank you so much for your time, and I appreciate what you do for PCA. Allison? Same to you. 2 years in a row. You are outstanding at what you do, and I really appreciate your time tonight. Check her out, MLB.com, Allison Footer. I'll share my story briefly. I know we're going to get to the game here, but I grew up here in Houston, Texas, and Missouri City, and I went to Willow Ridge High School. My dad is a coach, and I grew up. I'm so thankful I was able to grow up around football team and positive men in my life that showed me how to compete, showed me the right way to do things, and I'm thankful for my parents that allowed me to compete at an early age. Track was my first sport, and any of you all that ran track know there's no excuses there. It's you in that track and everybody else that you're running against. So you can't say, oh, the weather or it's cold, because the other 7 people that you ran against had to run in those same conditions. So I learned a lot about myself early on, and we fast forward that to my high school team, and I see one of my former opponents here, Ryan Cade. I mean, we battled a lot, but you think about, we talk about PCA moments, and I think all of you, if you think back, you have a coach or a parent or some event that happened in your life when you played, whether it was good or bad, you remember what happened in that event, in that game, or that practice, or that ride home, and what we focus on at PCA is trying to allow kids to not have those negative experiences. And a lot of people in our city and in our country experience negative events related to sports. So I faced a lot of adversity. Most of you know, I got an opportunity to play at SMU, and I got an opportunity to play in the NFL and then Canada, but I reached my dream, which was playing in the NFL. But I tore my ACL in back-to-back years when I got to Miami. And I remember crying. I was calling my dad, and I said, man, what is going to happen? He said, well, you got to rehab, so you might as well come back. So I bust my butt again. I come back, and I get signed by the Jets, and then I get released, and then I get signed by the Texans, and then I get released. And it's just like, it's an empty feeling. 2 things happen in pro sports. You get signed, and you get cut. So that's pretty much how it goes. Anything else in between is gravy. But I experienced a lot of highs, and I experienced a lot of lows. But I was able to draw back on my experiences as a youth, what my parents allowed me to go through, what I saw that allowed me to get through it. And everybody in our city doesn't have those same experiences. That's why I joined PCA. I started a business when I retired, but there was a void in my life. I was volunteer coaching wherever I could. I coached my kids. I coached at St. Thomas High School, but it just wasn't enough. And I'm thankful I met Ben Rose when I was at the Texans. And this opportunity came up, and I jumped on it. PCA filled a void in my life. Sports are awesome. I'm telling you now, if you allow your kids to compete, if you allow them to learn some life lessons, if you allow them to struggle, if you allow them to grow through those pains, they'll be better for it. If all of you are managers, or you own a business, or you have a corporation, I'm pretty sure you have some athletes in your staff and on your roster, and they can draw back on some of their experiences. I'm going to share a brief story about my kids. I'm going to try not to be emotional. I get a little emotional about my kids. I have 4 kids, twin boys that are 15. They're going to be sophomores at Manville High School. I have a 14-year-old daughter and a 3-year-old son. Yeah, that's what I said when the 3-year-old came. So the top 3, we compete. And what I learned from my dad and my parents, I don't care what you want to play or what you sign up to do, we're going to do it the best that we can. So if you sign up to play, we're going to play, and then we'll talk about it at the end of the season. Quick story back to SMU. My freshman year at SMU, we lost more games than I'd lost in my entire life. We won our first game against Arkansas, and we proceeded to lose 10 games in a row. My dad came and picked me up for Christmas break. He's back there. He'll tell you. I packed up my whole dorm room. I said, Dad, this ain't what I signed up for. And I'm sitting in the locker room where we lose 3 in a row, we lose 4 in a row, and guys in the locker room are like, oh, it's all right, AJ. I'm like, no, it's not. We just got spanked. Like, what is all right about that? And so it was tough. So I dealt with that adversity, but my dad said, they committed to you, you're going to commit to them. So you can pack your stuff up, but we're bringing it right back in a couple weeks. So I'm thankful for that opportunity. We got better every year, and SMU is still trying to climb out of that hole. But I share that story vividly because my daughter, I'm going to share a story about my daughter, and this happened this summer, so I'm thankful timing for this. My daughter will play and do anything I let her. She'll play football if I let her. She is not afraid of anything, all right? She's achieved a lot of personal success in her events. She plays volleyball, she plays basketball, she runs track, she's played softball. Whatever season it is, that's what she's playing, all right? Well, she competed in 100-meter hurdles this year, 13, 14-year-old girls. And she had never lost a race until this summer. She had never lost a race individually until this summer. Her relay teams have gotten beat, of course. So she gets beat the first time and said, oh gosh, this is gonna be tough. I'm PCA dad, I gotta figure this out. What are you gonna do? So I said, Aaron, hey, how do you feel? It's all right, I didn't run my best, Dad. It's all right. You gonna come back next time? Yes, Dad, we're gonna, all right, boom. We go back, she gets beat again, and I'm like, oh gosh, this is not good. All right, so she bounces back again. We fast forward a little bit, and she qualifies for the Junior Olympics. And for those of you all who haven't run track before, it can be overwhelming. This is legitimately the Olympics, but for kids. And we were at the University of Kansas. It's USA Track and Field sanctioned event. There are people and cameras everywhere. When I say everywhere, everywhere, just like you watch the Summer Olympic Games. But these are kids. She was overwhelmed. I knew it warming up. We go to the event. She's warming up. She's nervous. And I'm like, Aaron, there are 90-something girls in her category. She's ranked like 18th coming in. The top 24 advance to the next round, and so on and so forth. But she's nervous, and I'm trying to talk to her. I said, Aaron, look at where you're at. Look what you accomplished. I don't care what happens. Your best is going to be good enough, right? I learned that. A.J. Hinch told us that last year. I said, as long as you do your best, I'm going to be all right. Look at where we're at. We started this in February. You're with the 90 best girls in the country in the 100-meter hurdles. You're here. You're one of them. Doesn't matter what happens after that, right? Yeah, Dad, whatever. So, teenagers. So we go, we're running, it's raining, it's all the worst conditions for a track meet. And she runs, not her best race. She did not run her best race, and she didn't qualify. She didn't advance to the next round. So we're looking, the heats are coming out. She's in 16th place. They got another heat. She drops down to 19, 22. The top 24 make it. Boom, she drops to 28. Oh, God, I'm looking at it on my phone. I'm like, this is not going to be good. She's crying. I said, Aaron, what's wrong? Dad, I didn't make it. I said, you don't know that. I didn't tell her yet. I got to get my thoughts together. I'm PCA dad, right? So I'm competitive just like anybody else. And like, we like to win, but we also got to teach some lessons, right? Dad, I didn't qualify. I said, you don't know that. Let's just wait and see. They're still updating. I'm letting my phone refresh. I'm like, Dad, AJ, come on, we got to make this right. We got to make this right. So boom, I tell her, Aaron, you didn't qualify. More tears. She's just boo-hooing. And I'm sitting here in Lawrence, Kansas with my daughter, and I'm like calling my wife. I'm like, what do I do now? And she's not listening to me. She wants to go to the mall. And I'm like, we just lost. I flew you up here to Lawrence, Kansas. And I'm in my mind, but I didn't tell her this. I'm PCA dad, remember? So we talk about these lessons. So I said, Aaron, listen, you're number 28 in the country. 13, 14-year-old girls, 100-meter hurdles. Let's think about that. So we think about our kids and where they're at and how they finish. Reed just said it. Nobody remembers who won. I forgot who won the Super Bowl 2 years ago. Nobody cares. But what did you learn through this process? So I tell her, Aaron, you're number 28. And she's not listening. She don't want to hear it. Dad, I want to just go to the mall. I'm like, we're not going to the mall right now. We go get a burger. I take her to get some ice cream, and we talk again. She calms down. And I'm sitting here like, I have failed. I'm thinking I could have worked with her a little bit more. I could have done something. Now I'm feeling bad because she doesn't understand. She doesn't appreciate the moment, right? We take the rental car back. She's quiet the whole way. We get to the airport. The lady says, oh, I saw you were running. How did you do? I'm like, no, don't ask me. No. My daughter said, with her chin up, I didn't do my best, but I'm number 28. And sorry. At that moment, I thought, she's been listening the whole time. She got it. She realized it wasn't about winning. She's number 28 in the country. And she was proud of that. So it didn't matter what I thought. She was proud of it. And I'm standing here today. My daughter is blessed to be in a household with parents that understand that. But there's hundreds of kids around this city who don't have that opportunity. They don't. They don't. My phone rings all day, every day. AJ, can you come talk to my kids? Can you come talk to our parents? And that's what we do at PCA. The kids get it. At some point they will get it, but we have to keep feeding them. We have to keep pouring that information into them. And at PCA, we stride on better athletes, better people, because one day these people are going to be kids that you hire. These people are going to be corporate CEOs. They're going to be executives. They're going to be our state reps. We have to keep them involved in sports so they can go through some of these things. Because if you don't get it. You can't script the outcome of a game. You can't script the weather report on a football game. You don't know what's going to happen. But if you allow your kid to go through these things, they will be better for it. And we try every day to equip coaches, parents, and kids with these messages. Now, I should have told you this before. I'm going to get to a point where I'm going to ask you for some money, and we'll get to that point. But I can't do it by myself. I can't. We have trainers at PCA. We have board members. We have national staff. I can't do it alone. And if you're led today to get involved or want to support, there are some cards on your table. There's also people in this room. If you're a board member or a national staff member or a trainer, can you please stand just for a second? I want to recognize some of these PCA staff. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. If you can't touch me today when I get out, find one of these people and ask them how to get involved. We need your help. Everybody's not like my daughter. Everybody didn't grow up like me. Everybody didn't grow up like Reed. There's thousands of stories out there that we see. Every time I read a story or see something come across a ticker on ESPN of an athlete that blew an opportunity, it hurts my heart. It does. Sports provide a unique... I got a scholarship to play football at Southern Methodist University. They paid for me to get an education to play football. Think about that for a second. Think about that. I'm so thankful. I'm so thankful, and sports provides that for us. I want to thank you for coming tonight. There are some donation cards on your table. If you feel led to donate, please do so. You can leave them in between the centerpieces at your table. Somebody will come by and pick them up. I do welcome you to stay. We're going to show the Astros game here in a minute, but my daughter was 28th in the country, and she was proud of that. And we ought to be proud of our kids' accomplishments also. Oh, yes, more importantly, the bar and more food will be open. So hang around. I know we have some hungry bellies, but I seriously, guys, sports, this is what I do. It taught me a lot. It's afforded me a lot of opportunities. I'm sorry for crying, but I get emotional about my kids. Hang out with us for a little bit if you can. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate the support, and better athletes, better people.